So, starting with today's lecture, that is the homeopathic aggravation from Kant's philosophy. In previous lecture, we also completed the homeopathic aggravation in general, which is explained by Dr. Hahnemann. In this, he explained about the homeopathic aggravation as a that is suffering that the suffering of a existing symptoms, or there is a integration of that existing symptom of a patient, that we call it as a homeopathic aggravation. And in this we studied about what is mean by homeopathic aggravation, what is mean by medicinal aggravation, and what is mean by disease aggravation, and the comparison between these three aggravations. So in this, the homeopathic aggravation according to Dr. Kent, that is what is the view of Dr. Kent for the homeopathic aggravation. He explained it in the topic number 34 in Kant's philosophy. And in this, he took the reference of different aphorisms and gives the different examples regarding the homeopathic aggravation and put forth the concept of homeopathic aggravation. So starting with the topic, that is topic number 34, you have to remember the topic number also, that is lecture number 34, the homeopathic aggravation explained by Dr. Kent in Kent's philosophy. So what is the view of Dr. Kent? We will see. So in this he give first reference to aphorism number 154, that is the last clause. A disease that is of no very long standing ordinarily yields without any great degree of suffering to the first dose of this remedy. So in this he want to explain that the diseases that of no very long standing, the disease condition which are not very long standing, means the disease of short duration, that ordinary do not give that much great degree of suffering to the first dose of the remedy. That is, he wants to explain in this para, that is, in acute condition you will not find that much homeopathic aggravation or that much suffering of the symptoms of a patient as that is suffering in the long standing disease condition or in a chronic disease conditions. So a disease that is of no very long standing ordinarily yields without any great degree of suffering to the first dose of this remedy, which is to say, that is in acute disease we seldom see anything like striking aggravation unless the root disease has drawn near death's door or is very severe, unless it has lasted many days and breaking down of blood and tissue is threatened or has taken place. So in this, where there are the various changes that occurs in the body, that will leads to the more aggravation as compared to the disease condition which are only on the functional level or which are only of short duration. Then we will see sharp aggravations, great prostration, violent sweating, exhaustion, vomiting and purging following the action of the remedy. That is, when we give the remedy, we will see that there are some aggravations in that disease condition, that is of great prostration, violent sweating, exhaustion, vomiting and purging following the action of the remedy. I have seen most severe reaction which seem to be necessary to recovery, and it is the most severe reaction which seem to be necessary to the recovery. That is, if we see this reaction, then these are the necessary to the recovery of the patient. Such a state in acute disease where it has gone many days without a remedy and a great threatening is present will be to an acute disease what many years would be to a chronic disease of long standing. Long standing means a matter of progress. Long standing means where the disease condition is progressing, where there are pathological changes occur in the body and that we call it as a chronic disease condition or the long standing disease condition. If we say a disease of much progress or a considerable ultimates, we understand it better. So when we consider it as a long standing, or we can understand it better. If disease has ultimated itself in change of tissue, then you will striking aggravations, even aggravations that cannot be recovered from, such as we find in the advanced form of tissue change, that is where the kidney are destroyed or the liver destroyed, or where the lungs are destroyed. So there are some chronic conditions in which there is so progression occurred in that disease condition, that is of long standing disease condition, having a matter of progress that leads to the changes in the tissue of the body, and that leads to the aggravations, and that cannot be controlled with any remedy. That aggravations are so severe that that leads to the advanced form of tissue changes, that is there may be the kidneys are destroyed, liver are destroyed, or the lungs are destroyed. So these are the conditions of severe pathological conditions, and in which you will see a severe aggravations, where these are the diseases of long standing, or these are the diseases of chronic nature. So this is regarding the in acute condition you will find a mild form of aggravation, but in chronic condition you will find the aggravation that are so severe. This is the main theme of this para. Then in next para, Dr. Kent explain about a disease ought always to be well considered as to whether it is acute or chronic. Where there are no tissue changes, where no ultimates are present, then you may expect the remedy to cure the patient without any serious aggravation. They again repeat it in this para also. That is, what is the difference between acute diseases and chronic diseases regarding the aggravation. So in acute diseases, there are no tissue changes occur, and in that case, you will find that there are no severe aggravation or serious aggravation present in an acute disease condition, or without any sharp suffering, for there is no necessity of reacting from a serious structural change. That is, there are no serious structural changes that not leads to the severe aggravation or serious aggravation in acute disease condition. Where there is a deep seated septic condition, where pyemia must be the result, you will find sometimes omitting and purging. That is where the disease condition is deep seated, means it is a long standing disease condition, or it is slightly a deep seated, means a deep seated disease condition. In this they take the example of that is septic condition. That is, if the disease condition is acute and deep seated, in that condition you will find that the septic condition, where the pyemia must be the result, you will find sometimes omitting and purging. In that case, what the aggravating symptoms are? These are the omitting and the purging. So as a reaction of the vital force of the economy, where when order is established, this order which is attended by reaction, as it were commences a process of house cleaning, it does not itself, the drug does not it, if a crude substance is used, it is the action of the drug, of course, but the action of a dynamic drug is to turn the economy into order. So it is with chronic disease. When the chronic disease has not ultimated itself in tissue changes, you may get no aggravation at all, unless perhaps it be a very light exacerbation of the symptoms, and that slight exacerbation of the symptoms is of a different character. It is establishment of the remedy as a new disease upon the economy, instead of the reaction which corresponds to a process of house cleaning. Elimination must take place, as we know, probably from the bowels and the stomach, by omitting, by expectoration, or by the kidneys in those cases where everything has been suppressed. So in that para, they want to explain about the suppurative symptoms. What you see in aggravation. In last lecture also we studied that in aggravation, that is in homeopathic aggravation, you will see that it is a suffering of existing symptoms, or there is a aggravation of existing symptom of a patient, and many of the time it may be the aggravation of the suppressive symptoms, the symptoms which are suppressed in the past, or the what are the symptoms present in a patient, it is an aggravation of these symptoms, that we call it as a homeopathic aggravation. So in this para they explain the two things, that is regarding the acute disease condition and chronic disease condition. As in acute disease condition there are no structural changes, so the aggravation which comes in acute disease condition is less serious as compared to the chronic disease condition. And in chronic disease condition there is a long standing disease condition, there are tissue changes. So in that condition you will find the severe homeopathic aggravation in chronic condition. Along with this, the second point they explain about, that is the exposure or the giving the suppressive symptoms, the symptoms which are suppressed in past, these are also seen after giving the remedy as a aggravative, as a homeopathic aggravation. So in this it is a house cleaning, what they give the reaction, that is the house cleaning, means what is the suppression occurs in the body, that may be eliminated, that is it may be eliminated by omitting, it may be eliminated by the expectoration, it may be eliminated by the urination. What is the different way of elimination? That elimination symptoms takes place, as we know, probably from the bowels, stomach, by omitting, by expectoration, by the kidneys, in those cases where everything has been suppressed. So this is the way by which the house cleaning is occur. How we do the house cleaning? We clean the house, and in that way the house becomes the clean. In that way we have to clean the body, what is suppressed in the body, we have to clean it, and for cleaning we have to remove that symptoms by the different elimination way. So this is the second point which is explained in this next para. So in this way we completed the two para of the lecture number 34. Now what is explained by Dr. Kent in next para we will see, that is it may look like an aggravation when you have had for years a limb paralyzed from neuritis. That is, now here they explain one example, that is a limb paralyzed from neuritis. In patient there is a presence of neuritis and that leads to the limb paralyzed, means both the limbs are paralyzed. So suppose after you administered a remedy that goes right to the spot, that is in the very highest sense homeopathic or a truly specific, that paralyzed limb commences to tingle, a creep like the crawling interiorly of ants, tingling sometimes from which he cannot sleep for days and nights. So what he want to explain, that is he gives some example, that is a limb paralyzed from the neuritis, and what you see in that condition, that is suppose after you administer a remedy, that is for this condition, that is limb paralyzed with neuritis, you give some remedy, that is a homeopathic remedy that goes right to the spot, that is acting rightly, that is in the very highest sense homeopathic or truly specific, that is you select a correct homeopathic medicine for that limb paralyzed from the neuritis. In that case that paralyzed limb commences to tingle and creep like crawling interiorly of ants, tingling sometimes, from which he cannot sleep for days and night. This is due to the reaction of the nerves of the part. They are called into new life, into activity. That is, Now, after giving the remedy, patient's feeling that is the tingling or the clip-like crawling interiorly of ants. That is ants is crawling interiorly in that limbs. This is the feeling of that patient feels in his limb. That is tingling sensation and the crawling interiorly of ants. These sensations patients feel in his limb, and due to that sensation he cannot sleep for days and night. That is, these sensations are so severe that he cannot sleep for days and night. Now you have to know that this is due to the reaction of nerves of the part. And why this occurs, that is, you prescribe medicine and that medicine is acting and that gives the reaction of the nerves of that part. They are called into new life and into activity, and that is due to giving of the remedy that nerves uh, called into new life and the activity. That is, these are working now. These nerves are working. I have seen this in paralysis. You take, for instance, a child who has lain in a stupor for a long time. From inaction of the brain, the tingling that comes in the scalp, in the fingers and the toes is dreadful. The child turns and twists the screeches and cries, and it requires an iron hand on the part of the doctor to hold that mother from doing something to hush that cry, for just so sure that is done that child will go back into death. That is a reaction, so that all over the benumbed parts, or where the blood begins to flow into parts where the circulation has been feeble, where the nerves take on sensation again, we have reaction, which is but the result of that turning into order. That part has been benumbed and dead, and when circulation takes place in the part in order to repair its tissue, we have reaction which is attended with distress. If the physician cannot look upon that and bear it, he will have trouble. If he thinks it is an indication for another remedy, he will spoil his case. Now, in that he explained one example, that is the limb paralyzed with the neuritis, and in that case when he prescribed medicine, after that the patient having the sensation in his limb, that sensations are so severe that the patient cannot sleep for a days and night. But an intelligent physician must remember that these sensations are important as our remedy is working and nerves are activating or makes his activity, and now the patient may overcome that paralysis. This is the first condition. And Dr. Kate also explained that the child who has lain in stupor for a long time, that is, the child having a stupor condition or he having a paralysis of brain, in that case he is, that is, from inaction of the brain, the tingling that comes in the scalp, in the fingers and the toes is dreadful. That is, second example he explained about the paralysis in the brain of a child, and due to which after prescribing the medicine there is a tingling, or the tingling that comes in the scalp, in the fingers and the toes are dreadful. That is, there is a tingling in all over the body in the child, and that tingling causes the child turns and twists, screeches and cries, and it requires an iron hand on the part of the doctor. That is, the doctor has that confirmation about the remedy, that the child is so crying, so troubling the mothers and the fathers, and at that time it is the duty of a physician, as or he must be a firm physician, that he cannot change the remedy, or he have to give that confidence to the mother that she cannot prescribe anything for that crying or that tingling to the child. So in that case it is the duty of a physician, or the physician have must that it requires an iron hand on the part of the doctor. That is, he must confirm about his remedy, that is, the symptoms which are increasing now, These are the symptoms of the patient's existing symptoms aggravation, and you have to wait and watch in that condition. And if the physician change the remedy in that case, he will spoil the case and the cure is not possible. So when you have to remember that when anything is paralyzed, anything, any part of the body is not working, at that time when you prescribe medicine and that medicine is acting, that will lead to the condition, that is if the circulation is starting or there is a activate action of a nerves, in that case you may feel that is the tingling in that nerves, or there is a, that is when the circulation takes place in the part. In order to repair the tissue, we have reaction which is attended with distress. That is, when anything new is starting, you must have some trouble, but you have to wait and watch for this condition. And if you prescribe some medicine in that case, you will spoil your case. That is, what is going rightly, it will get spoiled. And in that case, you have to wait and watch, and you have to give confidence to the patient, that is these symptoms are for some time, they will go on and you will become a permanent cure. So these are the two examples Dr. Kent explained in this para. So all of you understand, or any difficulty regarding up till now? Yes, all are listening? Yes, are you able to understand? एग्जाम्पल समझ में आए हैं? पहले पैरा में उन्होंने एक्यूट क्रॉनिक कंडीशन के बारे में बताया, सेकंड में जो भी सप्रेसिव सिम्टम है उसे बाहर निकालना है, एग्रीवेशन उसे भी हम कहते हैं कि जो भी सप्रेसिव सिम्टम है वो बाहर निकलते हैं बाय द एलिमिनेशन वे. देन इन थर्ड पैरा ही एक्सप्लेन टू एग्जांपल्स. एक है उसमें से जो है लिम्ब पैरालाइज्ड ऑफ न्यूराइटिस, एंड सेकेंड है कि चाइल्ड में पैरालिसिस ऑफ ब्रेन है. एंड जब हम मेडिसिन देते हैं तो उसमें क्या होता है, टिंगलिंग होता है, और जो टिंगलिंग है वो सो सीवियर है. एंड एट दैट टाइम व्हेन वी प्रिस्क्राइब सम मेडिसिन और न्यू मेडिसिन इज इंडिकेटेड, at that time we will spoil the case. So in that case we have to wait and watch for some days, and after this you will find a permanent cure in that patient. So what is explained by Dr. Kent in next para we will see. We must discriminate between that which is reaction and that which call for a remedy. These things are only seen in homeopathy, never in any other practice. Sometimes the physician will be driven to his wits' end in dealing with these reactions. That is, we must discriminate between that which is reaction and that which calls for a remedy. That is, the aggravation occurs in a patient, you must understand, is it a reaction of a body, that is it is a homeopathic aggravation, or it is the aggravation of a that patients, or the which calls for a remedy. That is, you have to require a next remedy. The you have to understand between the difference between these symptoms, that is it is a reaction or you may require a new remedy. So these things are only seen in homeopathy, never in any part of other practice. Sometimes the physician will be driven to his wits end in dealing and with these reactions. It is sometimes a dreadful thing to look upon, and the physician may be turned out of doors. That is, it is sometimes a dreadful thing to look upon, and the physician may be turned out of doors. Let him meet it as a man. Let him be patient with it, because the ignorance of the mother or the friends can be no excuse for his violation of principle even once. So while practicing the homeopathy, you must understand between what is the reaction of the remedy and what are the symptoms that call for the new remedy. So it must be necessary for a physician to differentiate between these things. Then a disease of very long standing sometimes fails to yield without this aggravation. That is, a disease of very long standing sometimes fail to yield without this aggravation and disturbance and turmoil in the economy, and the deeper it is, the more tissue change you have to contended with, the more wonderful and distressing and painful in this reaction. When a patient comes back after every dose of medicine with violent reaction, with violent aggravation of the disease, with violent aggravation of the symptom, you know then that there is a some deep seated trouble. There is a difference between the ultimates of disease and absolute weakness of the vital force. So in that para, they want to explain that when the patient comes to you and at every visit he comes with a violent aggravation, or every dose of medicine makes in him a violent aggravation. That is, when patient comes back after every dose of medicine with violent reaction, with violent aggravation of the disease, and with violent aggravation of the symptoms, that is, you know then that there is some deep seated trouble. In that case, you must understand there is a some deep seated trouble present in that patient. That is, every dose of medicine that makes the aggravation of the symptoms of the patient. So there is a difference between the ultimates of a disease and the absolute weakness of the vital force. So in that case, you have to make the difference between the ultimates of the disease, that is actually what is the disease condition, and the absolute weakness of the vital force. Is the disease condition is so severe, or the second maybe the vital force of that human being or that patient is so weak that each dose of medicine makes a violent reaction in that patient. So you have to make the difference between the ultimates of disease, means what is the actual disease condition, and secondly the absolute weakness of the vital force. So there is such a state of weakness of the economy, and there is such a state of activity of the economy with such tissue change. If in feeble patients you may expect feeble reaction or none at all after your remedy, but in the feeble cases they are of such character that you have few symptoms and you can very seldom find a remedy truly specific. So in that case, where you have to make the difference, just a minute. शांत बसा, नाही तुम्ही लगेच निघून घाल नाही झालं आणखी, शांत बसा थोड्या वेळ. मूर्खासारखे इतकं ओरडा करायला काय ऐकू येणार काय म्हणा. हा कुदड्या, चल तू तिकडं आणि तू तिकडे खेळ. मी फटके देऊन दोघींना पण लेक्चर बंद करून. चल तू तिथे खेळ, नाही तर लगेच नेऊन घालीन मी गाडीवर. सांग तू लेक्चर संपवून दे, मी लिहून घालणार आहे तुला, मला आवाज आला. So we are discussing about the difference between the ultimates of disease and the absolute weakness of the vital force. So there is such a state of weakness of the economy, and there is a state as activity of the economy with such tissue changes. So if there is a so deep pathological changes that occurs in that patient, in that case the all the activity of that economy means that human beings are decreased, and the vital force also becomes so weak in that cases. So in feeble patients you may expect feeble reactions or none at all after your remedy. That is, in feeble patients you may expect feeble reaction or none at all after your remedy, but in the feeble cases they are of such character that you have few symptoms and you can very seldom find the remedies truly specific. That is, in that feeble patients, you may expect that the feeble reaction or none at all after your remedy. But in that case, in feeble case patients also, or in cases also, you will find that there is appearance of few symptoms and you can seldom find a remedy truly specific for that disease condition. That is, you select a truly specific remedy and that yields to the correct homeopathic remedy in that feeble cases also, that will give you the reactions. So this is the main theme of the para, that is, you have to differentiate between as the what is the disease condition or what is the absolute weakness of the vital force. Then in next para, Dr. Kent explain one example regarding it. That is, for example, say you get a patient that is destined to go into consumption, a merely suspicious case. That is consumption, a merely suspicious case. You administer the right remedy and a violent reaction comes, a foreshadowing of what he will go through years from now if he is not cured by the remedy. A shocking condition will up, come upon him. He may be frightened and come back and tell you that was a dose of a medicine, poison, etc. That is the remedy disease. Those are symptoms of the remedy foreshadowing the future of that case, because if that remedy was not similar enough to him, it could not do such thing, as it is because of the similitude of his state, and he may only have those symptoms in shadow, but the remedy cannot give him symptoms that he has not. I cannot give him symptoms that are not related to him except in those cases that are called oversensitive. Oversensitives, you know, are such as are capable of proving everything that comes along. You must know whether the patient is oversensitive and the proving the drug, or whether he has a vigorous constitution and is getting an aggravation. The remedy will be exaggerated in oversensitives and sometimes in those of weakly constitution, especially those with a very narrow receding chin, those who have sunken eyes, those who have senility marked in the eyes. So in this, Dr. Kent explained one example, that is regarding of a consumption, that is something consumed by the patient, a mere suspicious case, that is don't know what he consumed, and you administer the right remedy and a violent reaction comes, a foreshadowing of what he will go through years from now. He is not cured by the remedy, and at that time when you prescribe the some remedy, that is the right remedy, in that case he will show his symptoms, or the foreshadowing of what he will go through years, and now he is not cured by that remedy. A shocking condition will come upon him. He may be frightened and come back and tell you that was an a dose of medicine, a poison, etc. And what the symptoms they will occur, he will say that is the symptoms of the poison. That is, anything poison is taken, or you give me the medicines like a poison. So in that case, you have to differentiate between the oversensitive patient or the patient having the vigorous constitution. So in the previous para we studied about, you have to differentiate between the disease condition, that is the difference between the ultimate disease and the absolute weak of the vital force. And in this para we want to explain that is, you have to differentiate between the oversensitive patient and the a patient having a vigorous constitution and getting an aggravation. So you have to differentiate between these two conditions. And the oversensitive patients are the patients. Yes, are you able to listen? Okay, so we are discussing the para in which he explained about you have to differentiate between the oversensitive patient and the patient having a vigorous constitution and getting an aggravation. That is, the some patients having that vigorous constitution or that weak condition in which if they get the remedy, that remedy gives a reaction and that will lead to the aggravation in that patient. And the oversensitive patients are the will be an exaggerated in oversensitives, and sometimes in those of a weakly constitution, especially with very receding narrow chin, that is the oversensitive patient, which prove every remedy they get, that is they prove every remedy they get, that we call it as a oversensitive patient. So after prescribing the medicine, you must understand the difference between this type of persons, that is it a oversensitive patient? If you find a aggravation in that patient, it is a oversensitive patient, or it is a patient having some vigorous constitution, that is a weak vital force. In that case, the after getting the remedy, they will show the aggravation in that condition. So in first para they explain the difference between the what is the actual disease condition or the ultimates of the disease condition and the weakness of the vital force. Then in next para they explain about you have to understand between the difference between oversensitive patient and the vigorous patient. Now in next para Dr. Kent explain as the next paragraph continues this one to a certain extent. Para 155, I say without any degree of suffering, because when a perfect homeopathic remedy acts upon the body, it is nothing more than symptom analogous to those of the disease laboring to and unhealed this later by usurping this their place. This is only speaking from experience. Where Hahnemann makes such a remark, he does not place any great value upon it, because it is matter of opinion. So in para with the reference of that is aphorism number 155, he explained that is the aggravations or the I say without any degree of suffering, because when a perfect homeopathic remedy acts upon the body, it is nothing more than the symptoms analogous to that disease conditions. So these are the symptoms of disease condition which gets aggravated due to the slight strength of that medicinal power which we use for to annihilate the natural disease condition. So in this Dr. Kent again explained, you will find as a general thing in acute diseases that if a slight aggravation of the symptoms come in a few minutes, you will hardly ever think of giving another dose. That is, if you know that in acute disease condition you will see that is the aggravation of the symptoms in first few minutes, and in that case you cannot think of giving the another dose of the medicine. So you have to not repeat the medicine at that time. The remedy is so similar and searches so thoroughly that it is hardly ever necessary to repeat it, and that when you find a homeopathic aggravation in that acute condition in first few minutes, in that case you have to not, it is not necessary to repeat any dose of that medicine. Now there are circumstances when it is necessary to repeat, but this is so difficult to teach and so difficult to lay down rules for that. Only safe plan is to begin cases without repetition, to give a single dose, wait and watch its effects. I very commonly give in vigorous typhoid fever patients medicine in water because it is continued fever, but I watch and wait, giving it several days, and the slightest signs of the action of the remedy causes me to stop it always. I never vary from that. In a fever where the patient is feeble, the gain is immediate reaction that should never be done. So in that para, Dr. Kent explain about that is when in acute condition you find aggravation in few minutes, and in that case you find the aggravation in few minutes, there is no need or there is no necessity to repeat the dose of the medicine in that case. But there are some circumstances where it is necessary to repeat. There are various circumstances, in that cases there is a necessity to repeat, but this is so difficult to teach and so difficult to lay down the rules for that. The only safe plan is to begin the cases, but when to repeat, it is very difficult to टीच. दॅट इज, जर तुमच्याकडं ॲक्यूट केस आहे, ॲक्यूट केसमध्ये जर काही मिनटामध्ये तुम्हाला ॲग्रिवेशन येत आहे, तर त्या कंडिशनमध्ये काय करत नाही आपण, मेडिसिन रिपीट करत नाही. की ॲग्रिवेशन येते त्या कंडिशनमध्ये रिपीट करत नाही आहे, त्यामध्ये फक्त काय करतो, वेट अँड वॉच करतो आणि पेशंट रिकवर पण होऊन जातो त्या एका डोसमध्येच. पण तो डोस रिपीट करण्याची गरज पडत नाही. पण काही कंडिशनमध्ये काय की तुम्हाला मेडिसिन रिपीट करण्याची गरज पडते. मग मेडिसिन रिपीट करायचे तर कधी करायचं हे शिकवणं खूप कठीण आहे, किंवा त्याचे काही रूल्स तयार करणं हे खूप कठीण आहे. की मेडिसिन रिपीट करायचं तर कधी रिपीट करायचं हे कोणी सांगू शकत नाही. तर त्या कंडिशनमध्ये डॉक्टर केंडने असं सांगितलं की मेडिसिन जे काय तुम्ही यूज करता, तर ते मेडिसिन काय करायचं आहे, त्याचा सिंगल डोसच यूज करायचा आहे. जे काही मेडिसिन तुम्ही प्रिस्क्राईब करणार आहे त्याचा सिंगल डोसच यूज करा आणि वेट अँड वॉच करा. मग त्या कंडिशनमध्ये काही मेडिसिन लगेच ॲग्रिवेशन दाखवतील, काही मेडिसिन लगेच ॲग्रिवेशन दाखवणार नाहीत, किंवा काही त्याचे रिॲक्शन दाखवणार नाही आहेत. तर त्या कंडिशनमध्ये वेट अँड वॉच करायचं आहे फॉर सम डेज, आणि वेट अँड वॉच करून परत त्याची ॲक्शन बघायची. जर मेडिसिनने काही ॲक्शन दिली तर तुम्हाला ते रिपीट करायचं नाही आहे. पण मेडिसिनने जर काहीच ॲक्शन दिली नाही आहे तर त्यामध्ये तुम्हाला काय करायचं, ते मेडिसिन तुम्ही रिपीट करू शकता, असा रूल आहे. पण थेरॉटिकली असं शिकवणं की कधी मेडिसिन रिपीट करायचं आहे किंवा कधी करायचं नाही आहे हे खूप डिफिकल्ट आहे. हे तुम्ही कधी शिकू शकता, फक्त एक्सपिरियन्सने शिकू शकता. जेव्हा तुम्ही प्रॅक्टिस करता, वेगवेगळे पेशंट बघता, त्याच्यावरती तुम्ही ते एक्सपिरियन्सने शिकू शकता. पण त्याच्यासाठी त्यांनी रूल सांगितला आहे की मेडिसिन रिपीट करायचंच नाही आहे लगेच. त्या कंडिशनमध्ये मेडिसिन देऊन तुम्ही काय करायचं, वेट अँड वॉच करायचे. मग काही मेडिसिन तुम्हाला रिॲक्शन दाखवतील, मग त्या रिॲक्शन दाखवलेली मेडिसिन तुम्हाला रिपीट करायचं नाही आहे. पण जर काही मेडिसिन रिॲक्शन दाखवलीच नाही आहे तर त्या कंडिशनमध्ये तुम्ही ते मेडिसिन रिपीट करू शकता. सो दॅट इज द ओनली सेफ प्लान इज टू बिगिन केसेस विदाउट रिपिटेशन, टू गिव्ह अ सिंगल डोस अँड वेट अँड वॉच इट्स इफेक्ट्स. I very commonly give a single dose and wait. I very commonly give in vigorous typhoid fever patients medicine in water. That is, in typhoid fever or the in fever condition, Dr. Kent uses a water potency. That is, the dose of medicine mixed in water, and in that case you have to give 2 spoonful of water, and that is the water potency that is used by Dr. Kent. So because it is a continued fever, that is, in fever cases, most of fever cases he used that water potency. But I watch and wait giving it for several days. That is, that water potency, that is single dose is used, but that single dose giving in water potency repeatedly, and when you find some signs and symptoms you have to stop that giving the same dose to the medicine to the patient, and the slightest sign of reaction of the remedy causes me to stop it always. I never vary from that. In a fever where the patient is feeble, to gain an immediate reaction, that should never be done. In an remittent fever, the reaction may come in a very few hours, and in one dose should be the rule. That is, in remittent fever the reaction may come in very few hours and one dose should be the rule, while in the typhoid the reaction will seldom come in a few hours. It is a matter of few days, and hence the repetition is advisable. In typhoids that are sometimes delicate, never do such a thing. The more vigor there is in a constitution, the more the remedy can cooperate with that vigor to bring about a safe and a quick action. So in that cases where the fever of, that is the remittent fever, means the fever is continue, in that cases the reaction may come in few hours. That is, you find the reaction of that remedy in few hours and there is no need to repeat the medicine. But in fevers like a typhoid fever, that is the intermittent fever, in that case you have to give the medicine in repeated doses. This is according to the the duration of action of that fever. That is, in remittent fever the single dose is sufficient, but in typhoid fever you have to need the repetition. So in typhoids that are sometimes delicate never do such thing. The more vigor there is in constitution, the more the remedy can cooperate with that vigor to bring about a safe and a quick action. So the more feeble the patient, the more cautious you should be about using the smallest dose you can give. That is, if the patient is so feeble, so exhausted patient, that is having a weak vital force, in that cases you must be very cautious while prescribing the medicine, and in that case you have to give the very smallest doses you can give in that cases for the feeble patient. In many chronic diseases it is possible to bring about a reaction in the first night, hence the danger of repeating the remedy. If the delirium subsides or a moisture comes upon the skin, he slumbers placidly. Medicine never be given beyond such a state. There are times in diphtheria when the repetition of the remedy will kill, and are some there are times when repetition will save the life. I hope someday to be able to discover the principles, that is, the when to give the medicine or when to repeat the medicine. It is very difficult task, and it is the reaction of that repetition. Some dose of repetition may save the life, but some dose of repetition may kill the patient. So it is very difficult to decide in what cases you have to repeat the medicine or in what cases you have not to repeat the medicine. So it is very important to know about that thing, and Dr. Kent hope that someday will be to be able to discover the principles regarding the repetition. That is, he hope that someday there will be the able to discover the principle regarding the repetition of the medicines. So this is the view of Dr. Kent regarding the repetition of dose, that is explained by him in next para. So in this way, up till now we finished the half topic, that is the homeopathic aggravation. In that, in first para we study about the aggravation in acute condition and chronic condition. Acute conditions are not so severe, but in chronic condition these are severe, where the pathological changes are occurred. Then in next para we will see that in aggravation there is a aggravation of existing symptoms. Along with this there is a aggravation of suppressed symptoms, means what is suppressed in the body that can be eliminated by different way, that is by the bowels, by omitting, by expectoration, by the kidneys, etc. Then in next para Dr. Kent explained two examples regarding the appearance of homeopathic aggravation, and in that the homeopath must be that firm he cannot change the remedy, and if he change the remedy or give the second dose of remedy, he will spoil that case. Then in next para Dr. Kent explained about the difference between the ultimates of disease and the absolute weakness of the vital force. Then in next para he give the example of consumption and give the difference between the oversensitive patient and the patient having a vigorous constitution. Then in next para he explained about the repetition of the medicines, that is in acute conditions. So this is the view of Dr. Kent regarding the homeopathic aggravation in chapter number 34. The half topic is covered. The half topic we will took in tomorrow's lecture. I think all of you understand, or any difficulty regarding it you can ask, or we will stop here. Yes, we will stop here. I think only 3 are remaining. Karishma, send me attendance. Okay.